Good morning. Our gospel reading for this morning in its older translation has one of the most famous verses of all Scripture. Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. I bet you've heard that a lot of times. I certainly have. I never quite knew who Caesar was when I was a kid, but after a while I caught on. The translation that is more used these days reads, Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. It's a trick question. It's a setup. Jesus is coming close to Jerusalem, and we all know what's going to happen. Certainly he did. And he had irritated a lot of people in positions of authority in the community, especially the religious authorities. In fact, he managed to do something nobody had done for several decades, and that is he managed to put two factions of the Hebrew community's leadership who were at odds with each other together again as friends, because he was the common enemy, and so much so that they cooperated. And they set this up, and the Gospel tells us it's a trick question. Should we pay taxes or not? The people who followed King Herod were known as Herodians. They were Jews, but they were people who fully cooperated with the Romans. And they wanted him to say that you shouldn't pay the taxes because that way they could have him arrested for violating Roman law. The Pharisees, on the other hand, wanted him to say to pay your taxes because the coins had imagery which suggested the divinity of Caesar, and to pay the taxes acknowledged that he was divine, and that was in violation of the first commandment. The Lord your God, the Lord is one. As a matter of fact, the coin's actual wording that you paid the taxes with said, Tiberius Caesar, divine son of Augustus, high priest. So to give taxes and pay taxes with that image was going to be a violation. Jesus doesn't give them a direct answer. Jesus says to them, show me the coin. So they pulled out the coin. You have to understand, they pulled out Roman coins, but they were temple officials who weren't supposed to deal in Roman coins. But they did, for their own profit, by the way. Another sermon, another time. But for this purpose, he tells them to pull out the coin. And he says, whose image do you see on the coin? And they say, Caesar, Tiberius Caesar, divine son of Augustus, high priest. He said, well, render to the emperor what's already the emperor's. It's got his picture on it. But render to God what's God's. They went away, the questioners, angry. They'd been tripped up, and they didn't know quite where to go with it. But others heard that answer, and it's been a quandary ever since. Sometimes in modern times, I'll hear people use this quote, I would say somewhat out of context, but I've heard people use this quote to try to separate secular and sacred, as though there were two worlds. The secular world of Caesar, in which it's okay by implication to do whatever you have to do, and then this other sacred world where you buff yourself up a little bit and present yourself better. But that's not what this is telling us. There's some of that reality in our lives, but it's not what it's asking of us. It's asking us, who will we live in the image of? Eastern Orthodox Christians would say, what is our iconography? Who are we going to be the icon of? Are we going to be an icon of the powers of the world that have oppressive authority, that have military might, that choose to enforce their will on nations and peoples, as was experienced in the first century? Is our icon going to be, we're as powerful as you are? Is our icon going to be, in other words, the coin of the realm? If you think about that for a minute, it might unsettle you. It unsettles me, because sometimes I suspect we look like we're icons of the world in which we live in a material way. Sometimes we have to be, of course, but sometimes I think we're more comfortable there than we admit. But what I think Jesus was trying to get across then and now is that we're not supposed to be icons of that which can be embossed on coins. That's the world's power, and it's real, but it's not who we are. We are made, we are told in Genesis, in the image of God. That is to say, out of the imagination of a loving creator. That kind of image, the imagination, the envisionment. The challenge is to be people in the world who are not of the world. Yes, we're in it. It's okay. We do what we must. But we're not of it in the end. We are of a different place. We are icons trying to reveal God's image in the world. It's eternal. Its beginning is mysterious, this icon. Its conclusion is mysterious. All we can do, day by day, to fulfill this icon, the icon of God's imagination revealed in us, is to bear witness to God's love. It'll take lots of different forms. A kindness when it would be easier to be difficult. A reaching out to someone we know in need when it would be easier to ignore. Paying attention to what somebody else has to say that we don't quite understand or agree with, knowing that somehow God's image is at work in that person too. Maybe we can find a way for the icons to speak one to the other. We're not doing that very well as a nation right now. The Caesars of the world, of which there are always many, are not doing that well at all. They're just trying to run it and control it. It's an extraordinary reality, I think. Certainly in my lifetime, it seems worse than ever, everywhere. I don't see a lot of beacons of hope if I look at it that way. But if I look at it as we can be icons who bear witness to a very different thing, to an eternal way of life that is joyful beyond happy, that's deepening beyond challenges, that gives us solace as we face challenge and difficulty and sadness at times. If we're that icon, well, I think we're getting at what Jesus wants us to be. Pay our taxes, it's the coin of the realm, that's fine. But know down deep that every one of us is the creation of God's loving imagination. That lasts. The coin comes, the coin goes. But that icon, being of the imagination of the heart of God, that's eternal. I hope your week ahead is a good one, and stay healthy.